So I had a pretty interesting day yesterday. I spent the afternoon turning my poems into AI songs, and then I spent the evening going to a live gig at my local pub. And both of these activities fall under the experience of music somehow, but they felt completely different. And critics would say, very convincingly, that in neither experience was I involved in the creation of music. Yet in both, I feel like I was. And as AI changes everything, I feel like there's a whole new creative category unfolding across every form of art. Here's a good example. So I've been making some Christmas woodcut prints. Just for fun, just for friends and family. This is the woodcut print, and it's just of a little crow and a hedgehog, and I messed it up, so I changed it into something else. It's quick and easy, carve it out of a little block, and I made about 30 of them, but then I ran out of ink. And on running out of ink, I cheekily went and photocopied one on the same paper with high quality ink. And this is the photocopy, this one here. I don't think you can see any difference. I mean, maybe you can tell if you feel the texture of the ink, but these are visual, really. They're not a tactile experience, and the visual experience is the same. As the creator, they feel totally different to me. Hand-rolled, inked, pressed, placed, cut, and a photocopy that took me 2 seconds. I mean, the receiver of these, who's going to know? Both of them are my creations. This one feels more valid somehow because it was made by my hand. But if the output looks the same, does that really matter? And both of these moments, the music yesterday and my art today, each point at the same thing, which is that our sense of authorship is becoming harder to locate, even when the experience of the receiver feels authentic. And AI is shining this whole thing under a massive spotlight. Up until very recently, even with this, there has been a reference of trust in anything mass-produced or recorded or digitally distributed, even if it's a photocopy or a print, that it is a print of my hand-carved woodcut. There is a thread there, however thin, to the original human-made art. And yes, in the history of creativity, many things have questioned this before. In the late 70s, synths were considered completely fake music, and there were movements against it. But then in the 80s, tons of music was produced that felt really human and heartfelt. With AI, this is the first time when there's a full detachment from a person, and it's causing a huge problem. For the very first time since the camera and first photograph or the first pressing of recorded music, that link to something that people felt was real has totally broken. The trust is gone, but human creativity has not, and it will not. I work quite a lot with AI. I do prints, I do oil paintings, I do sculpture, I do digital photography and analog photography. I make weird little films. I'm quite a broad-ranging artist, probably to my own detriment. But I also have a mechanical engineering degree. I didn't study art, and that surprises a few people, and that's always kind of annoyed me because engineering is insanely creative. What's happened is the word creatives and creators has morphed with artistic. And what's art has just become a total puddle of a mess between medium and meaning. But over the last 100 years, what's generally happened is that arts have moved from communal practice into professional commodity. And generations into this now, we've totally confused what's unique and rare or skill with the deeper reason as to why we need to create or why we need to listen and witness the creations of others in the first place. And AI has exposed this confusion really sharply to me. And I'm surprised that so many other people haven't really seen it. So I'll explain. Firstly, I think it's really important to recognize just how much creativity shifts within our culture. So for example, can I get this out of the way? For example, a doctor now may not be seen as the most creative profession, but 150 years ago, they would have had to be an expert at anatomical drawing because there were no scans or photos. So if someone came in with an abscess or a cut and they wanted to document how something was healing or getting worse, they would draw it. And the drawings would have to be quite accurate. Today, we would say that that is a creative profession because they are an artist. But as soon as scans and photographs came in to achieve that task better, they dropped their pencils. Or flip it the other way. Take something that was considered incredibly creative, someone who was considered incredibly creative a long time ago, like Leonardo da Vinci. He would not be an oil painter in 2026. He was interested in the cutting edge technologies of his time. He would be pioneering in the latest codes in AI or deep into quantum computing, and nothing like the artist as we see him historically. So I think it's time for us to readdress what we are doing with these kind of categories of creativity. Things are not only about to change, they are already changing. And people who say that there's no heart in anything that is created by AI, this argument has always existed. There was no heart in photography, there was no heart in film. But it doesn't matter if the output is the same to the masses. Doesn't matter. You already have AI-generated music hitting the viral charts on TikTok without people realizing it's AI. People are watching YouTube videos that are moving them without realizing that the voices and the images were generated by AI. People are listening to stock music on independent films that are AI. And this is the very, very beginning. Because if you take the activities that I did yesterday around music, I genuinely don't think people are going to mind me turning my poems into songs if they sound good. But the gig I went to that evening, there is no place for AI. There were a few people on stage with instruments and us responding to each other in place. The problem is financial. And the creative people invested in these industries are looking at it through the current economic models that sustain those musicians and actors and writers and artists. But all these current models are about to break under AI in at least 5 to 10 years. Do you really think that they'll be the same? And even if you just look at where we are now, it is a bit bonkers when you look at it historically, because of this professionalized creativity that's shifted everything. Before the recording or mass distribution, professional artists were only created and enjoyed with the elites. No one in communities that you or I would have been in would have been paid to make music. Yet it existed much more in those communities than it does now. You would all sing more. In church, in the taverns, as you worked the fields together, as you went to war. You would write songs about your elders, about events, about each other. Before the radio was invented, you'd gather around the piano or another instrument and you'd sing as an activity together. And it wouldn't matter if you sang badly. Once you could pipe in songs that were sung really well into your home and you had that comparison, then it suddenly became preferable to listening to your aunt and uncle. But even when I was a kid, 2 of the bands I loved were my mates' bands that played locally, and they never even recorded anything. My favourite painters were my dad and his mates, and the battles between the rappers at school and the graffiti artists on the local underpass going over each other's work were the kind of cultural hot topics around creativity among my peers. None of them ever thought about making money. Well, that's not true, actually. All of the artists desperately wanted to make money. They just never did. My point is that people still do these things just because of the joy of doing them. They would come home from their day jobs and they would create. And they've carried on creating, those who have success and haven't had success, because there's something they just have to get out of themselves. And I think to really understand the fundamentals of why humans want to make and witness art, we have to strip back the whole thing. And it's hard to do in this age of professionalized artists. As watching this, you might well be a full-time musician or an actor or an artist or a poet or an upcoming writer. And I genuinely think that all of your industries will continue to exist and they will be profitable in an age of AI. It's just the way they work is going to be so disrupted from what we understand now that I think the only way we can survive as this all shifts, as we don't know which direction it's going to go in. Like the dot-com bubble, there's probably going to be a couple of AI busts before it becomes integrated, but it's going to be fully integrated. We all know this. And I think we need to do something which is called first principles thinking about why we want to create in the first place. If you're scared about AI and you're worried about what's going to happen, if you rethink about your art form through first principles design, you'll find the best platform to spring into whatever becomes of this new world. So first principles engineering is not about trying to solve the problem. It's about asking if you are solving the right problem. The best way to understand it is It's not a joke, but it's formed as one. It's how many design engineers does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is, do we need a light bulb? So Bernard Roth wrote a book called The Achievement Habit. I'll put it in the link if you want to buy it. Now, this was written way before AI was ever going to be a thing, but I think the first half of the book is great. The second half of the book just kind of rambles on a bit, but the first half of the book is incredible. And in it, he gives a really good example of this first principles thinking. He talks about his students who are given a problem in Nepal, where the very expensive incubators that often cost tens of thousands of pounds were often breaking, and it was getting really hard to get parts for them, high levels of infant mortality in that area. So these hospitals came to these engineers in Stanford and were like, please, can you design better incubators that don't break as often for us? So if you weren't a design engineering student, you would instantly just solve that problem. But instead, they asked if it was the right problem. And it turned out that it wasn't. But they found that many of the incubators that were working never had newborn infants in them. The real problem is that all the villages were very far away from the hospitals, and the transport routes meant that it often took hours. So instead, they created heat blankets at set outposts around each hospital that had these kind of sleeping bags with a wax element that you could melt and heat that would keep the infant warm for hours and hours and hours, long enough to get them to the hospital. And this absolutely solved the problem, but it was not the problem they were commissioned. They were told to solve one thing, but they had to ask if it was the right thing. And that is what the best engineers do. And that's what I enjoy most about engineering. It's pure problem solving. And that is also creativity. Unlike engineering, art does not have a measurable answer of what is good or bad. It has to be purely subjective. And that's why it fascinates me more, because it's more about people. Unless you get too muddied by professionalism, where the metrics of money are very easy to define what is successful. But success often breeds success. Like the £200 million Marvel movies you watch, you don't realise there's £200 million in marketing behind them as well as the cost of making them. You can manipulate metrics and money. The value of art is purely subjective. So we have to ask ourselves, what are those fundamental values? The real question underneath all of this is, what are we actually seeking when we make or receive something creatively made by others? Because for something like AI, maybe AI-generated elevator music or gym music might be okay. In those contexts, I'm not so interested in the art. I'm interested in the function of what the music is giving me. In the gym, I'll listen to whatever Spotify produces for me, and it's generally good enough to get me going. But that's not what I want from a gig. And we already accept the differences between a synth drum and a live drummer. But like I said earlier, the problem is based that our economies are based on these professionalized creative roles, and artists rely on Spotify plays to pay their rent. And I hate to say it, but these are all going to change, and people are going to lose jobs like every other industry has through industrialization. Creative workers are maybe just slightly louder than farmers or letterpress engineers when their professions get automated. But the pattern is the same. And I think it's a natural progression, because this decoupling from reality to this point where AI has cut it completely has been happening for a long time. A great example of this is film. When cinema started, people on screen had no soul. That's what everybody said. They were not really people. They were recordings of people. Throw your popcorn at the screen and boo, and you're not going to put them off because they're not real. Now, we accept an element of reality here. Because with AI coming along, we are like, hey, I prefer the real actors. So the frame keeps shifting. And then reality in film shifts again. You get green screens and effects and actors struggling to respond to animated characters represented by a balloon on a stick. Denzel Washington once said that film is not an actor's medium. It's actually a filmmaker's medium, because an actor can be giving the performance of her lifetime, and it's going to be focused on their screen partner for their reaction during that whole thing. Or an actor can be watching their performance back and see them scowl and go, I don't remember doing that. And it's actually when they scowled at the lighting people, blinding them in an offcut. Now, that person, the core, can be faked. And it's the last bastion of that connection to reality being broken. And it's broken across the field. So finding the fundamentals is not so simple, because there's so many layers of fake that have been placed and built to get us here. You could go right back to the invention of writing. There's some artists who say that once kids learn to write, they kind of stop making art because it lets you quantify and qualify the things around you. And art exists because things can't be quantified. Painting is how I understand myself and the world around me. The quote I always bang on about is from Edward Hopper, who said, if you could explain a painting in words, there'd be no reason to paint. For me, a photo of a place doesn't really tell me anything about it, but me painting that place gives me this kind of meditative understanding of it, of my reaction to it. Or viewing a painting that someone has made of a person tells me more about their connection to it than a photograph, which tells me nothing but a machine's reaction to it. But art is a unique thing like that. Music is more communal in many ways, and acting is communal. And these differences matter, and how we interact them matters. Some bands I only like live, and I dislike their recordings. And some bands I've only heard recordings of, and going to see them live, I've been bitterly disappointed. It is a vast, confusing, and messy subject, because there are so many mediums by which we make and consume these things. But one by one, I've been thinking about how to boil them down by first principles. And I'll most likely get them wrong, and you'll need to correct me. But my reason for doing so is that I think every one of you who's working in any one of these industries are going to witness over the next 5 years a complete shift with AI. And if all of the professionals working in these spaces can hold on and recognize what the fundamental truth is in why they create, then whichever way the world spins, they will come out from it in a place that is so pure, not somewhere that fits a model that's dying. So I'm going to go through music, I'm going to go through visual art, writing, and acting, just as the four that I've been trying to boil down. So music, well, what does music do? It shapes time. It shapes time with sound to regulate bodies and create connection, to regulate a kind of external state that can be calming, that can be energizing, and it can be focusing. AI doesn't have any of these desires. These are human desires to coordinate groups in a shared rhythm, whether it's a quiet harmony or 2,000 people in a shed to techno music. And it allows an emotional expression and play through pattern sound. And then the most important fundamental principle I found was rehearses an emotional state safely. So you might have heartbreak or anger or some kind of passion in life, and you can play that through music in a way to let that emotion out in a safe way. But the instrument, the recording method, the genre, and now the AI generation are secondary. The core is this embodied patterns, the communal cohesion, emotion and synchrony. So if you're involved in music, what can you do? Well, I think you should play with AI, see what it can do, see how it might be able to help your practice, much in the way that synths did for people in the late 70s. But also go to as many acoustic experiences as you can. Go and see a choir or sing in a choir. Remember and feel those fundamentals as you explore how AI will help craft new industries, because the whole empire of Spotify and streaming will change as fast as it came about, and I have no idea which way it's going to go. I do truly believe that the value of music comes from this fundamental place. And if you come from it too, you'll be best placed to pounce on any new angle or any new industry that does arise. And it's all too easy to say that the thing you want to do is going to be taken. But there will be new doors. And I think if you come at it from knowing this, going to be well equipped, because a lot of musicians are going to come from the tools of these old dying industries and what works in those. And the second I came at was writing. It's an interesting one, writing, because there's two forms of it. There's for information and then there's kind of story. You transmit information from one mind so that it can spread across time and distance, so that memory can exist outside of the body. Writing itself needs to be questioned. Really, I should say storytellers. Writing for information purposes, AI is just going to dominate. None of us are as blown away by AI writing now as we were a couple of years ago, because we've all started to hear and see the tone of how AI models write. But everything about writing, technique, genre, style, grammar, novels, journalism, screenwriting, all sit on top of the basic need of storytelling. They are secondary. The fundamental is just that. I think the value of stories on a personal, local level are going to be needed more than ever. And the distribution methods are getting heard, publishing houses, all of these things, the AI slop of novels that you see on Amazon, it's really hard for writers. I get it. But I would highly advise them to, especially if you're writing a novel, to consider things like a Patreon. Consider setting up something like this, like a YouTube channel where you just ramble. I don't even know if anyone's still watching, but I genuinely am doing this because I'm not trying to sell my prints. And I think if you're authentic and you're trying and you're honest, you're gonna connect with some people. I think if you can get your writing on Substack, on Patreon, talk about it, you don't have to put your face on, and just find ways and outlets to let your creativity out. But think about the fundamental reason of why you write. What is it that you get from a truly great novel? I'm going to pause writing there because I think it actually comes under a similar one to acting and performance, which is my next category that I really looked at. It's similar to writing, but in a kind of more visceral type of storytelling. So it's a kind of safe environment to witness conflict, desire, or decisions, and to engage empathy in a more direct way. Yes, often, if you compare the film of a novel and a novel, the depth that you can get to through reading is more, but there's more time invested in it. In a 2-hour film, I think it's fair to say that the visuals do give you a more of a punch, and a kind of collective experience of shared attention is an important part of acting and performance. You know, playing pretend. We were all actors as kids. There's a fundamental desire in it for us. And acting's a really interesting one across cultures, because some cultures have held actors incredibly high and some cultures have held actors as the lowest of the low. But again, in this, stage, film, TV, social media, motion capture, and now AI are the delivery systems. The fundamental need is to watch humans, or people who represent humans, model human life. Even if it's not about humans. And it's really hard. Voice acting is near extinct. We just don't know which way it's going to go. But actors have always struggled, and they're often the most passionate of people about their craft, or maybe they're just the most melodramatic and therefore best at acting passionate. That would make sense, wouldn't it? But people are going to accept AI in film. They just are. First, they'll accept it in things like commercials. Then they'll accept it in easy access dramas, because they're cheap, and hiring actors, they call in sick, they have personalities, they have difficulties. An AI actor doesn't always exactly act how you'd hope it to, just like a real person. But you can get 1,000 takes from them without them getting tired. They don't need to sleep, they don't need to eat, and they do not need to be paid. But the same reason that people are flooding live theatres more and more now is that it does fill a demand that cinema never could. But up until very recently, people felt the reality of cinema. Now with AI, it's cut. The trust has gone fundamentally. And we might not see it playing out now, but we will over the next few years. And if you are connecting in real spaces with real people, I think you will get back to the first principles of why you do what you do. Human energy in shared spaces. Whether that's small theatre, devised performances, or live storytelling, workshops, community projects, because that is where the skills cannot be automated. And if you are an actor, your job will not be to compete with AI, but to make it irrelevant in the situations where human presence is the entire point. And things are just going to get harder, but there's always going to be a new door. There always has been with any technological shift. And we do not know where they're going to be, but we do know the doors are going to revolve around things that feel real to people. And that might not be something that you can even get through a screen. I think everyone should be engaging with AI in all of these professions, but I think you also need to come back to what is real and basic. And that is what I do. Because I'm an artist. I did actually write it about art here, and I've rambled on for long enough, so I might as well just finish it off with visual art, or what I said here as modern image making. And that's the kind of externalized perception and meaning in a stable form that others can see, communicate identity, states, emotions, belief, explore values, and to record what words cannot. And that's fundamental for me. And here, again, it's the tools like the paint, cameras, Photoshop, AI generators, they're secondary. So with AI, what can artists do? Well, I'd recommend doing what I do. I play with all the latest AI tools and look at how I can try and have some commercial utility from them. But I don't get scared by AI because I do feel very connected to these fundamental first principles, because it's all going to change so much. That if you hold on to these, then you're totally tethered to the truth. And that's where the value lies. Because while we can reach millions of people at the moment through mediums like this, I do not think this is going to be sustainable. And I think every freelancer panicking this world has to really embody the idea of 1,000 true fans. In mediums where 1,000 is a poor metric on social media, 1,000 views isn't considered many. I mean, these videos get about 1,000 views, but you know what I mean. These are fans who will all spend up to $100 on you a year. That's a ticket to see you, a book you've written, a t-shirt, a recording or an experience or an art print. Then you've absolutely made it as an artist. That's 100 grand a year. And even if your expenses are super high, I think that's a great goal to define yourself as a successful creative, because we've confused ourselves on vanity metrics that the platforms in which we distribute this want. They want eyeballs for a long time and a lot of people to see them. That means you are successful for the platform. It does not mean you're successful for yourself. Like this channel, I've got a Patreon. I mean, I have 25 patrons, but if you want to start me on my road to 1,000, that would mean a lot. But before you go there, let me tell you what I mean by first principles thinking. Say this video, I wanted to try and sell some of these Christmas cards, which I'm not, by the way. They're just for my friends and family this year, maybe next year, or if you join the Patreon and make this seem viable. But say I was trying to sell these. My videos likely get about 1,000 views. It might get 100,000 views. And that would seem, by the platform of YouTube, a successful video. But if no one clicked the link on my website and bought one of these, it would not be a successful video for me. I might get an extra 10 quid in ad revenue, but because I've been confused by the metric of what a successful video looks like, I haven't asked myself the real problem of is this video solving what I really want it to do, which would be to sell more of these. But some of my videos have got hundreds of thousands of views, and some of them have got 30 or 40 views. And sometimes the ones with less views got really good fans, and I found one or two of my ideal 1,000 fans, and they'd go through to my website and they would buy things. And that's the best way to think about success. And so like I do for this channel, I think you should start building your 1,000 fans, or help an artist and become one of those fans. Okay, and even as I make this new channel, I'm putting out a video a week, and I hope it's gonna work and I hope people find it helpful, but I'm competing with AI channels that can churn out way more than me. And while I use AI on this channel, I do think that's fine. I could make an AI channel and I might do that, but I recognize that it is something different, because there's this, which I hope is more of a connection, and to try and hold on to that in an honest way. I might do an AI channel to transmit information about different artists. And if it is just about the information, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. For documentary material, when I just want that information, like I do reading an information pamphlet, I do not care for who is performing it. I do not see that as art. And for creators like myself or anyone else, things like having the Patreon are great. Having a profile out there where you can use your journey is interesting. And it's going to be an absolutely wild 5 years for anyone who's creative. But I truly believe the way to bootstrap yourself is to go in both directions. You need to be looking at these tools because they are coming. You need to see how they might make your creation process easier and take out some of the long, hard work. But you also need to go back to basics, because the way they work will not fit the current industries. The economics is going to change, but no matter what people do, people are always going to want to create, and people are always going to want to support the human creators. For the first time now, people have lost trust in how they consume content and media and art. If they see something phenomenal online or a great video of a great trick shot in sport, their first thought now would be, could it be AI? The magic is gone from recorded content. It's gone. Trust is gone. You will never know now. If you hear something and think that woman's voice is amazing, you just don't know. Before AI, you had auto-tune and you had all these other tools, but there was always that thread of talent that you would place back to the person, and it's vanished. It just has. And the only way we can bring back trust has to be on a more local level. Going back to first principles of why we want to create and what we need. It could be a really exciting time for creativity. We have a century of believing we could reach each other perfectly through recorded and reproduced mediums. And I think it makes sense that the next phase is going to be far more local again, not in a nostalgic way, but in a practical way, because the only place where you can guarantee authenticity now is in the room with the person who made the thing. And both forms can exist, the mass-produced version and the handmade version. And AI is carving right through the middle of it. And they will both exist and both thrive, but I think they'll have different audiences. How we define those through new economic structures over the next 5 to 10 years is going to be chaotic and exciting. There's going to be a few busts, just like there was in the dot-com boom, where everything was over-leveraged and we knew the internet had great potential, but didn't know exactly what it would look like. That will happen. Things will level down. They will come up again. And we will all have to engage with AI as a tool for mass production. And in the same way, we have to keep making in the most direct human way we can, because that is where the meaning still lives. I've really rambled on there. And if you're still watching, then I hope you find it useful, because all of my videos about AI have been about coming up to this cliff edge, but we are now in it and we're falling. And we're starting to see things. And I think over the next 12 months, it's going to be really profound for lots of creative people in how they make a living. So I hope you have something in these that sustains you more than money. And if you want to be involved in communications around this and setting things up for artists, then do consider the Patreon for Art Loud and joining. And I'm going to be setting up a Discord soon, and there's going to be some good concepts that we're going to go through. So I was going to end the video with saying I am just going to digitally print more of these, but I'm not. I'm going to go out and buy more ink, because by first principles, I mean, I enjoy making this. I don't enjoy making this. You can't even see the difference, but it's not about you. Huge thank you to Clementine, Keelan, and all the patrons who make these videos possible.